I want to talk about our brother Ryan Hinton Jr., who stood all the way on business and took the life of a police officer after an officer, took the life of his son. And I don't know what people expected to happen, truth be told, because after the countless black life that has been lost, black men and women who had their life stolen and ripped away from them at the hands of no good race soldiers. So it's inevitable that violence and uprisings will take place, because we as foundational black Americans, we have been that group that has been, racially targeted and suppressed for the longest, through slavery, racist Jim Crow laws, redlining, mass incarceration, police, race soldiers running around cutting down black life in the street left and right, and 9 times out of 10, they never, held accountable or brought to justice. It's swept under the rug, and the race soldier gets to walk away a complete and total free man. And I don't respect that, nor do I rock with it. So I'm not surprised by this whole thing. The only thing I'm surprised is that it didn't take place, much sooner. It didn't happen sooner, truth be told. But I think what needs to be said is that, the police officer, who lost his life, that thing is starting to overshadow our brother uh Rodney Hinton Jr.'s son losing his life at the hands of that no good race soldier, when he was retreating, that race soldier still took it upon himself to, cut down our brother, shoot our brother, which is a bunch of nonsense. And some will say, well, he had a gun, he was getting out of a stolen car, this, that, and the other, miss me with that, because I don't believe for one nothing that come out of a race soldier's mouth, because 9 times out of 10, what comes out of a white supremacist and a race soldier's mouth ain't nothing but lies, so they gotta produce evidence and receipts of that, still, and even if they would for some strange reason produce evidence and receipts of that, the fact still remains our brother was retreating, which means when you retreating, you pose no threat. You harmless. You're trying to flee away from the scene. You're trying to actually get away from them. So that's no threat. So they can miss me with that. And then the family of our brother Ryan Hinton Jr. They spoke, about not the situation involving, him taking the officer's life, but they spoke to the situation of our young brother losing his life at the hands of that race soldier, and the father got up there and said some things I didn't particularly agree with, nor did I like. He said that he's praying for, the officers involved, that Jesus Christ is his Lord and Savior, that his grandson was wrong for being there, and that the officer was wrong, as well, and that's a bunch of nonsense if you ask me, just keeping it all the way real, and if you ask me, the families, trying to, maybe, detach from our brother Rodney Hinton Jr. a little bit as in their mind, they might perceive that this might be, widespread backlash attached to that, and they don't want that to, spill on over into them, but they just trying to detach a little bit, if you ask me. Now, our brother Ryan Hinton Jr., from what I know, has got a public defender, which actually means public pretender, because they don't fight no way. They just try to get you to cop out and take a plea. So our brother Ryan Hinton Jr. needs a good legal defense team in his corner, somebody that's going to fight and not just try to get him to plea out to something, because he, might could come off of this. He got a good chance of coming off of this, if you ask me, because it wasn't premeditated. He went out there and, cut down that officer, after, just moments after, rather, he found out that his son, was killed by police. So, he wasn't thinking right no way. So he got a good case for, maybe being insane, insanity, it's just several ways that they could spin it. But a public defender, if you ask me, ain't really gonna try to spin it. They just gonna try to get him to cop out, and submit to whatever they trying to deliver to him, but another thing I want to hit on and talk about is, the show of, force of all of those white supremacist race soldiers showing up at our brother's court hearing. This was to try to punk him out and put fear in his heart and intimidate our brother. And our brother walked through there with his chest out and his head held up high, didn't let him punctify him, and when they were looking at him, he looked them right back in the eyes, because when a person looks at you hard in them eyes and you turn away or you put your head down, this lets them know that you in fear and you cowardice, and they got you at the end of the day. Our brother showed no signs of fear. In fact, he showed bravery, and he stood on what he believed in and let nobody put fear in his heart. That was that FBA resilient spirit, that revolutionary spirit that exists inside foundational Black Americans. So yeah, I'm standing on the side of my brother Ryan Hinton Jr. And I got the audio and the video of, race soldiers showing up, in masses to his court hearing, in which they wouldn't have done this if this was no white suspect. They only did it because he was a Black person, and tried to show up and punctify him. And it didn't work. Our brother stood on truth to power, walked through there with his chest out and his head held up high. And we're going to walk through and talk about this thing how we normally do, family. Fair use. And another thing I want to add too, I almost forgot to add that we going to need some charges put on that race soldier that shot our young brother, unjustly, because our young brother was retreating, which means he posed no threat, and I don't want to hear that he had a gun, he was in a stolen car, this, that, or the other. All of that goes out the window once a person is retreating. And I don't believe nothing, like I said before, that comes out of a race soldier's mouth. So I don't believe he had no gun, or even was in a stolen car. So they got to produce evidence of that, and we need this race soldier brought into custody and put behind bars quick, fast, and in a hurry. But let's continue.
So the court will now set no bond until Tuesday, when we'll review the statute for continuing no bond in these unusual and very tragic and terrible circumstances. Where will the defendant be housed, and will he be safe? And I asked that.
And the judge asked, would our brother be safe? He ain't got to be safe from the inmates because, in fact, the inmates is going to protect and look out for our brother. It's, these racist COs that they talking about, because these racist COs could be out to earn a name for themselves at the expense of, our Black brother, which is a bunch of nonsense. But, that takes place all of the time because, law enforcement officers, even correctional officers, they all get on cold with one another. But let's continue.
Because he was transferred, as I understand it, to Clermont County yesterday.
That's correct.
On my order.
That's correct.
And will he be returned to Clermont?
And another thing I want to add, our brother got a good chance on beating this too. If he get a good legal defense team, not no public defender. So somebody, like I said, should be, maybe the family. Somebody should get this brother a Give Send Go account. Not a GoFundMe, because they'll probably try to tear that down. But he needs a good a crowdfunding account put up in his favor to be able to get him a good legal defense team, because at the end of the day, a public defender ain't it. A public defender means public pretender. All they going to do is try to get him to cop out and submit, because he got a good chance on coming off of this thing, because he never had no criminal record. He done this in the heat of the moment, which means it wasn't premeditated. He got a case for insanity, if you ask me, but I don't think the family, from what I seen at that press conference, they was, speaking some forgiveness. And, to me, this is just, from my perspective, and they might be trying to detach a little bit from our brother as to not bring, heat and backlash and, perceived threat of targeting to the family, because racist white supremacist police officers, they all stick together, and they got a long track record of, targeting people's families, after things like this happen and take place, so maybe they don't want to get involved because of the fear, but they should, get behind our brother, because he needs a good crowdfunding account to get some good legal defense going up. But let's continue.
County until Tuesday.
It's our understanding he'll be returned.
And you have a safe environment for him there in Clermont County.
Yes, sir.
You'll return him on Tuesday, May the 6th at 8:30 a.m. for a hearing at 9 o'clock in the morning?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Your Honor, for the record, we'd ask the court to put a bond on him now, but we understand that it's not a bond hearing has been requested.
All right, no bond.
By nature.
Thank you.
And they had that Black mammy come and escort him out, you know what I mean? Because they didn't want the negative backlash of maybe a white officer doing it, who knows? But, I don't know if the family peeped that, but they had that Black mammy, police officer bringing him out to the courtroom. But let's continue.
We can hold him at no bond for 72 hours,
Yes,
is that right?
Yes, correct.
Thank you. All right, thank you so much.
Look at them trying to get our brother, through fear and intimidation. It didn't work. Them racist white supremacist police officers, aka Ku Klux Klan members with a badge, were ice grilling and staring our brother down, but he had his chest out and his head held up high. He looked at him, in their eyes, to show no fear. I'm standing on business. It is what it is, and the chips may fall where they may. I'm willing to die about mine. You know what I mean? And that's that FBA warrior class spirit, shining through on our brother. And what I'll say is, our brother needs a good legal defense team in his favor. A crowdfunding, something of that nature, because a public defender ain't it. This brother had no criminal record, and he certainly got a good chance of coming up off of this. And we need some charges put on that no good, race soldier that cut his son down, unjustly after the young brother was fleeing, which means you retreating and you pose no threat. And I got something sent to me where it got this brother's, inmate info, if any of the family wants to put, any money on our brother Rodney Hinton Jr.'s books, but do your homework on it. It's going to be posted, link in the description. The info going to be in the description, but do your homework on it and know that it's true, right, and exact before you give any money. Because nowadays you just never know, people running scams and finesses left and right. And I didn't, check and do my research on it. It was just, given to me, so I wanted to share it with the family. This brother's inmate info is out there if anybody wants to put any money on this brother's books. But instead of putting money, I say that, somebody gotta, we gotta get a crowdfunding together to where though we could put money for this brother needs a good legal team, behind it, because he got a good chance at beating this. And another thing I want to add to the white supremacists, COs and people that are working in that jail, we got eyes and ears on this story on the Black FBA grassroots. We riding with our brother, and don't let nothing come up mysteriously happen to our brother, or it's gonna be all hell to pay. Just my thoughts on the matter. Peace.